Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you for joining us for this press conference that we called for on behalf of the Egyptian Americans for Democracy and Human Rights and our partner organizations. We're going to make an opening statement about the current situation in Egypt, as well as we'll hear from some of our partner speakers and also take some questions and answers. The Egyptian Americans for Democracy and Human Rights condemn in the strongest terms the coup interim government for continuing the Mubarak policy of burning mosques and churches to incite sectarian divisions and violence between Egyptians. The government continues to lie about committing such heinous crimes. Egyptian church leaders have been very clear and have made statements accusing the government thugs of attacking churches, while at the same time the government and the Ministry of Interior has withdrawn its police protection from churches throughout the country right before those attacks. It's obvious that in the government's futile attempt to paint the Muslim Brotherhood and other Muslim movements in Egypt as violent and terrorist, that including killing or that the government does not spare any immoral or inhumane actions to achieve its goals, including killing its own citizens, the burning of dead bodies, and lying about the reasons for the death in their death certificates. The same security intelligence and Ministry of Interior forces have committed similar atrocities in the past that have been documented against churches in Egypt. So it's no surprise that they're continuing to use the same tactics today, because the coup government today is the same government that existed when Mubarak was there. And specifically, the attacks on churches seems to be a deliberate attempt to gain sympathies from Western nations who have Christian majority people. But at the bottom of it, at the end, there's no evidence, and we've seen many statements, there's no specific evidence that points to Muslims or Muslim movements are behind the attacks on churches. And in fact, all the Muslim movements in Egypt so far have condemned the attacks on churches. Yet, some media outlets continue to say that it's Islamists, these anonymous Islamists, that are committing such crimes. We say that if they are in fact doing these things, bring them to justice, arrest them, hold trials, show the evidence. You can't just simply say that a certain group of people are doing it and you don't have the evidence. And with that said, that ends our specific statement. My name is Ahmed Badir. I'm an Egyptian American. I just actually returned from Egypt on Monday. I was there during the Rabaa massacre, and unfortunately my brother was killed in Egypt last Wednesday during the attacks on Rabaa Square. He had been protesting peacefully and camped in the Rabaa Square. And when the attacks happened by the security forces last Wednesday, he was one of the people that have been killed. He took a bullet to the neck by a sniper, and that killed him. And that has, I've seen the bodies myself. I've seen the people that were killed. I have visited Rabaa Square. I have firsthand knowledge of what has happened there and the aftermath that our family had to deal with to get that body out. After we found out about the death of my brother, we actually went to try to retrieve the body from a mosque called the Imam Mosque in Masr City. And they told us that in order to take the body, we would have to accept the death certificate that says that he died of natural causes. And it's clearly in his neck, there's a huge bullet wound in his body. And here are some of the images of when we arrived to this makeshift morgue, which was a mosque, a place of worship. And they list the names of the dead there. There are no authorities, there's no government, everybody's fending for themselves. It's like a country without, a lawless country, and no one is helping. It's not like there's any forensics. There's myself sitting with when we identified my brother's body, everybody has to go search for they have to uncover the face to see if that's the body or not. And in doing that process, you see so many other dead people, so many faces that have stories themselves. One thing that was consistent at this makeshift morgue, that everybody there was killed. Everybody there had a bullet in their head, a bullet in their neck, a bullet in the upper chest, which means there was a deliberate attempt to kill these people. It wasn't just random. My brother didn't have multiple bullet wounds in him. Other bodies didn't. They all had single shot bullets in them, in the upper body or in the head or the neck. And if you pause on this picture, for example, this is one of the most horrific pictures I saw there. These are two, what remains of corpses. And I know it's very graphic, you can't see them, or you may not be able to show them on television, but on the left side, the top of the skull is blown off, and what shows there is brain matter that's seeping out. And on the other side as well, part of the head is removed, and these are charred bodies. And what I was told by people who were there, that were volunteers in the hospitals, that these were injured individuals from the Rabat Square that were being held in the field hospital that was being held in Rabat Square, and they were burned alive inside the mosque. Before any church was burned in Egypt since the coup, several mosques were attacked and burned and torched. So the security forces in Egypt that are now keen on showing the world the burned churches started the violence with the mosques. The same people that are burning the mosques and attacking and blowing up the mosques are the same people that are attacking churches. And we're here to say that any attack on a single house of worship is an attack on all houses of worship. It's unacceptable, it's deplorable, and we hold the coup government and the military in Egypt responsible for these atrocities because they could be prevented. In fact, they're the ones that are either instigating this violence, attacking the churches and mosques themselves, or allowing them to be attacked by their thugs, by so many repeated evidences and statements that have been made. Eventually, after an ordeal of 10 hours, being at that makeshift, sitting there with 300 bodies, my brother's number there was 261. After sitting there for 10 hours, we were finally able to get the right certificate after getting lawyers to intervene. But it was a long process. We had to send somebody to the police station. It's not like the police came to you to help you. Hey, there's a crime here, let's help you solve it. You have to actually go to a police station that's miles away, get a police report, file a claim, file a complaint that your family relative has been killed, get a police number, take that to the medical examiner, get a medical examiner to examine the body, then take that to another agency that finally gives you something called a permission to bury. And that's what's needed, because no cemetery in Egypt will allow you to bury a body without this permission. It would be against the law. Finally, right before sunset, we were able to get the body out. And after we got the body out, we had a problem just being able to transport the body somewhere because there was no cars. There were so many dead bodies that all the cars, all the trucks were taken. And it was, at one point, one of the images is that my brother's body is on the sidewalk. We're waiting to try to rent a car, get somebody to help us take it to a mosque so we can do the janazah and bury him. And at one point, we finally found a truck. People got in. We took them to some mosque, random mosque somewhere, to be able to do this janazah. And about 11 o'clock at night, after the Aisha prayer, after we did the janazah, we were able to bury him. And I think I may have a picture. This is, him, my brother's body being carried. Under flashlights at 11 o'clock at night is when we were able to bury him. And this is a high standard, or this is the as best as you get right now in Egypt. To be able to bury somebody, we were the lucky ones. Many other family members were not able to bury their dead. Many of them can't even find their dead. Many of them, the bodies have been confiscated by the government. So we consider ourselves fortunate to even have been able to bury them, my brother, in the middle of the night with flashlights, under curfew, in these conditions, because so many other Egyptians were not able to do that. So even in death, people are continuing to be humiliated by the interim government that's there and this military coup. It's very sad what's happening there. And we have to do something to stop it. It's criminal, and it's just shocking. For the first time in Egypt, I never thought that something like this would happen in Egypt out of all of my visits. And it's very disturbing, and we need to do what we can to make sure that this stops. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our next speakers and allow them to say their statements, and then we'll have questions and answers. So starting off, we'll have Dr. Safiuddin Hamid from Operation Save Democracy. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Safiuddin Hamid. I represent Operation Save Democracy. And Operation Safe Democracy is an Egyptian-American task force which was formed immediately after July 3rd military coup in Egypt. Our main objective is to deal with the aftermath of the military coup, and we have been calling and we will keep calling on President Obama, the US Congress, and the American people to stand for democracy and to denounce the July 3rd military coup in Egypt. The overthrow of the legitimately elected president, the iron fist that policies have been, the iron fist policies that have been adopted by the interim government, and the declaration of the emergency law are now pushing Egypt to a new cycle of violence and chaos. The new target is not only people. Now it is the houses of worship, where churches and mosques are burned, attacked, desecrated. OSD condemns such acts and calls for an immediate, including, and on the top of it, the Minister of Interior, General Ibrahim. In the absence of civic government, civic elected government, and any independent or principled judicial establishment, any responsible mass media, or any ethical security forces, the Egyptian people are facing unprecedented threats of violence. And now, assaults against religious buildings. People now lack effective platform for justice to defend even their faith-based institutions. Such a toxic environment, as it was described to us by the previous speaker, a jungle has been created in Egypt. One cannot possibly determine what is true and what's false. What are the rumors and the innuendo, and what are factual and authentic anymore. During Mubarak's era, the dirty tactics of divide and rule was used quite skillfully by the government to create rifts between Muslims and Christians for 30 years. For 30 dark years, both sides were tricked, were dragged into this depleting animosity, which diverted their attention from the corrupt and failing Mubarak's regime. Limited and the individual disputes that happen in any society was exaggerated, was inflamed, and was publicized widely by the Mubarak's regime to deepen the rift between Egyptians and their fellow Egyptians. Even where there is a period of relative calmness and peace, the security apparatus managed to plot and stage a terrorist act against a church in Alexandria in December 2010. During a Christmas Mass, to justify another extension of the emergency law, which lasted at that time 30 years. Scotland Yard evidences have shown that it reached the Minister of Interior itself. The military coup leader today has cancelled the constitution, reinstated the emergency law, and as a result, one should not be surprised that more and more of those incidents and claims will appear again and again. Some may be true, some may be false, exaggerations, fabrication to score political points. In such a chaotic atmosphere, it is almost impossible to find the truth. The US needs to act now, without any hesitation or delay, and must use their most effective bargaining power, including cutting off military aid to Egypt and withholding official recognition of that interim government. This is illegitimate government. A government came by military coup. Until they restore the democratic process in Egypt. As American citizens, we are all pleading to President Obama to denounce the military coup, to boycott the illegitimate government of Egypt, to demand immediate release of the elected President Morsi, his assistants, and all other political prisoners, to condemn the massacres, and to condemn the government instigation of religious rifts and clashes, to demand restoration of the 2012 Constitution, which was approved by 64% of the people. So we will have some kind of laws for this land, which is now like a jungle. And finally, to endorse and sponsor every effort that promotes national reconciliation among the various groups in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement. We will now hear from Sarah Jamil from the Egyptians Abroad for Democracy. Please join us.
Good morning, all. My name is Sarah Jamil, and I'll be speaking on behalf of Egyptians Abroad for a Democracy movement. I would first and foremost like to begin by stating that we in the movement hold no affiliation with any political party or organization, and we do not support any specific political party. We are simply appreciators of democracy, and our ultimate aim is to save the newborn democracy that was born on January 25th. And to give it back to the free Egyptian people. In order to have this newborn democracy back, and in order to have justice and peace back in this great country, Egypt, we must display support. I'm so sorry, I was moved by the pictures that I saw.
It's okay.
I haven't seen charred bodies in a long time, and it just moved me, so bear with me for a second. In order to bring back justice and peace to this great country, certain demands must be unconditionally met. The U.S., if it truly wishes to display support for democracy and its hatred against fascism, must stop all military aid to this bloody coup. If it wishes to explicitly practice what it preaches, this bloody coup must be denounced. Secondly, foreign nations must all impose sanctions on the current government, and one who stays silent at this time, especially in the midst of these hard times, is in fact publicly endorsing this aggressive and extremely violent coup. The current government does not represent and will never represent the Egyptian people in any official way or unofficial way, and therefore has no right to govern us. Lastly, our president must be restored. This is an unconditional demand, and even if he was to return for one day, he must be restored. We will not back down from that. Any ousting of our president must be done throughout the legal system. Otherwise, we will not recognize it. One main goal of our movement is to expose the Egyptian media and its biasness and its pathological lying by describing those who are protesting peacefully as terrorists. I advise all not to listen to a single word that is spoken by the Egyptian media that has never been on site and never witnessed firsthand what's occurring over there at these events. We urge all to listen only to eyewitness accounts and to the demonstrators who were actually present at these demonstrations. In addition, we have to emphasize the fact that those protesting in Egypt cannot all be Muslim Brotherhood. They are from all factions of Egypt. They're just regular Egyptians. They are simply people who want their democratic votes back in their hands and not in the hands of the military coup leaders. Furthermore, I would like to talk about the churches that were burnt and the controversies surrounding this great issue. The Egyptian media continuously tries to portray this as a battle or a struggle between Muslim extremists and Christians. Let me correct this. Let us make it clear that there is no evidence on the ground as to who burnt these churches. As a matter of fact, a member of the Minya Church made it clear, even on Egyptian media, that it was thugs who burnt these churches. And these thugs are very well known in the Mubarak regime and post-Mubarak regime. In addition, what makes it all right for them to burn mosques? Mosques and churches are both houses of worship. No one has the right to burn them, and no one has the right to say that it's okay to do this because terrorists are inside. The Egyptian media continuously portrays this as a battle between Muslim versus Christians. Let me correct this by saying this is a case of human rights versus no human rights at all. This is a case that is peace versus violence, democracy versus military tyranny. Rest assured that the Egyptian people will not back down until the truth prevails, democracy is reinstated, and the wrongdoers of the army and security forces will be held accountable for these actions and their actions. The blood of the martyrs and those who were injured will not go unanswered, and the January 25th revolution will live on. A denunciation to the military coup has to take place immediately, and Sisi has to be tried and treated as a war criminal, because he is a war criminal. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you for your statement, and just to remind the media that there are a number of groups here today, that each group is responsible for their own statements. So for example, a statement made by Egyptian Americans for Democracy is responsible for the statement that was made at the beginning. The Operation Save Democracy, that's their own statement. While we agree we're all against the military coup and we all condemn the burning of churches, we all condemn the burning of mosques and the killing of innocent civilians, we may not all agree on that right now. So we don't want to attribute different statements to everybody, all the organizations here. So just be mindful of who the speaker is and attribute that statement to their organization. Next, we would like to welcome from the American Muslim Alliance, Mr. Mehdi Bray.
Thank you and good morning. I am Imam Mehdi Bray. I'm the National Director of the American Muslim Association, a American Muslim coalition advocacy group involved with human rights and civil rights. And I come forth to bring a statement, but I also want to bring greetings from who's not able to attend, but is here, not in the body, but also here in spirit, Reverend Graylin Hagler, who is indeed the member of the Board of Directors for the United Church of Christ and the pastor of the Plymouth Congregational Church here in the greater Washington, D.C. area, who made it very clear to me on the phone that he was in solidarity with the people of Egypt for the desire for freedom and democracy. In fact, in previous occasions, he visited the Egyptian embassy, emphasizing his support. And also that he too, like I, condemn all acts of violence against houses of worship. It's despicable. But I also want to add that this is nothing unique to Egypt. We've had houses, African American houses of, there was a time, remember there was church burnings taking place in African American houses of worship. We had mosques that were burned after 9/11 and more recently in Murfreesboro, Tennessee and in Florida. So this despicable, and I do emphasize the word despicable, display of behavior is not something that's unique to Egyptian society. It is something that is a malady that we as human beings must continue to speak out against. And I think that is one of the solutions. As we come close to the 5th anniversary of the March of Washington, I can remember it so vividly because I was 13 years old, standing in the front row when Dr. King made his speech. I came here 50-some years ago. I'm 63 now. But I was here. And something that Dr. King said, I think is applicable to what is happening here today in Egypt, as well as in Syria. Dr. King says that there is a time, when he was speaking about the Vietnam War and the violence that was being taking place, by his own government, America, in Vietnam. He spoke out very clearly against the odds of popular opinion and made a statement. He says, there is a time when silence is betrayal. And that when you are silent, not only do you betray a just cause, but you're complicit and assisting this type of behavior. So therefore, I'm glad to be able to stand here with the other groups and associate and condemn this act of barbarism against houses of worship. And also to condemn actually the silence of my government. As an American, I'm perplexed and vexed that my government has remained silent in its behavior in terms of dealing with the coup d'etat and now with what we see is happening in Syria. That the government has been very, very quiet about the situation. Not to step forward. And the Obama administration, I want to be specific. And again, words are attributed to organizations, so I'll speak again on behalf of myself and the AMA, American Muslim Alliance, but I'm really troubled and befuddled with the Obama administration behavior towards dealing with Egypt as well as Syria. And it's silence and these atrocities that are taking place. Not to know that this is what happened was a coup that goes against the very values that we as Americans hold and cherish: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That to see a coup d'etat take place and not want to call it a coup. And again, I'm reminded of what Bob Dylan said: you don't have to be a weatherman to know which way the wind is blowing. And certainly, that this administration and its tepid response to the military junta that is now in control of Egypt, is troubling, and I think really needs to be call to action, a call to action in its tepid behavior towards these types of incidents that are happening in Egypt and in Syria. So I want to just conclude by also saying that we're going to continue to stand because, again, these types of acts sometimes are the acts of what we call agent provocateurs who will do things like this, like church burning, and try to set Muslims against Christians, order for their own really sick desire for control. This type of activity is not new. It is so we often say it's the same soup but a different bowl. Or as my grandmother would say, people doing something dirty trying to call it clean. So I just want to again associate myself with the remarks, and I finally want to say that one of the things that we think that is one of the answers to this situation is to indeed something that we at the American Muslim Alliance want to announce today, that we are forming, and we have our board of directors have approved, a Egyptian American Friendship Association, where we will deal with people diplomacy, the people of America, the people of Egypt, the people diplomacy. Because I think sometimes, diplomatic diplomacy that we desire at our government level is not successful. And we've seen this work. We saw this working with the U.S. People Friendship Association for China. It opened doors, We also saw this happen with Sudan in America, with the Sudanese American Friendship Association. So we're going to try to, we are through the AMA, American Muslim Alliance, we will institute a U.S. Egyptian Friendship Association, and hope that many, and also I'm happy to announce that one of the persons that will be joining this friendship association, who will serve as the honorary chairperson, will be former Senator Mike Val, who hopefully soon will travel to Egypt along with Americans to express their solidarity and their friendship, bonds of friendship, people to people. Let me conclude reminding people as we again think about the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Let me also conclude with something that Dr. King reminded us, that what injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that we, as part of the human family, are like many fibers woven into an inescapable garment of human destiny. So I want to once again remind those mischief makers, those agent provocateurs, those with the military, who think that they can create cleavage between the people of Egypt by doing these type of horrible things and acts of provocatorial acts, that you will not win. Because if there's anything history has proven, is that deliberate injustice is more fatal to the one who imposes it than the one on whom it is imposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam Mahdi Bray.